debate. Now I look to Mikhaila Peterson to continue the case for opposition.
I'm Mikhaila Peterson, and it's my pleasure to oppose the House's motion that we should move beyond meat. I rewrote my entire speech an hour ago and decided just to embrace my story because my life isn't actually focused on spreading a meat diet around. I have a podcast and other things to do, but I live this every day, so I'm here to talk about it. I'll start with my absolutely absurd health experience that's received widespread negative media attention on top of being fairly unpleasant to live through. The reason for that negative media attention was because my diseases were put into complete remission by an all-meat diet. No plant food. So I understand where Heather's coming from when she cut eggs and dairy, because those were so hard on me, it was unbelievable. But it wasn't the meat. A very brief background. I was diagnosed with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis when I was 7, with symptoms starting when I was 2. I had 37 affected joints. I spent 16 years being treated with immunosuppressants I injected twice weekly, starting when I was 8, and then other medications to treat my many other diagnosed health ailments, chronic fatigue, and severe, absolutely crippling depression. I lost my hip and my ankle, that's why I wore this skirt, so you can see this, to arthritis, and had them replaced when I was 17. I tried going the medical route, and it didn't work. When I was 23, my skin had started to break down from rashes, and those stopped healing. I couldn't sleep on my shoulders, and I was so mentally unstable I couldn't have a relationship. My right wrist felt like it was going to be next for my 3rd joint replacement. Anyway, I went back to school for biomedical science, and I decided to reduce my diet dramatically just to rule it out, not because I thought it had anything to do with my health. I cut it down to meat and whole foods, and within 2 months, it eliminated nearly all of my symptoms, and I managed to get off of SSRIs and Adderall and immune suppressants. We were absolutely shocked. 2 months of that limited diet put me into remission after 20 years of an autoimmune disorder that destroyed my joints. Soon after that, I had a baby, and that plus stopping my SSRIs way too quickly brought my autoimmune symptoms back, along with SSRI withdrawal and depression. I can't begin to describe the level of terror of having diseases return and losing my mind to depression again. A year later, again out of sheer desperation, to eliminate my autoimmune symptoms and depression, I reduced my diet further, and I went down to just meat. And I knew that that wasn't bothering me based on how I could feel after I ate it. I figured you can't be allergic to meat. I thought I was only going to be on that for a month, and then I was going to be able to reintroduce foods back in and eat normally. However, that wasn't the case. It took 6 months for my autoimmune symptoms to go away, but then they did, and my depression went away, and I was in remission again. Now, since then, I've tried to reintroduce plant foods because I actually like cake and fruit and other foods, and I don't really want to be on this diet, but I can't introduce anything without having my autoimmune symptoms come back. So, one of the arguments might say, and this is what happened with the media too, is okay, maybe this girl is just this one girl, but my family is on this diet because they have autoimmune disorders. So then it was, well, maybe this family is just a strange family. But we are a strange family, okay, so that's definitely true. But I've got a Facebook group now, and this is just small to start, but I have a Facebook group now with 7,000 people who have all been brought to this diet because they've tried the medical route and they have no other options and they're miserable, and they're recovering from diseases. The ketogenic diet, which is the type of diet I'm on, minus the plant food, has been shown to treat epilepsy since the 1920s and was kind of put out of fashion by anti-epileptics, which aren't as effective but are easier to adhere to than the diet. 1 in 9 people above the age of 65 have Alzheimer's, which is now being referred to as type 3 diabetes, induced by carbs and sugar. There's an obesity epidemic in America, with 36% of Americans overweight and 32% obese. 1 in 5 people there have an autoimmune disorder like me. 1 in 6 people are on a psychiatric medication, which are almost impossible to get off of, like I was. A potential solution that should be seriously looked into is radically simplifying diet with fewer ingredients, going back to a time when we weren't all chronically ill, and that involves dramatically increasing red meat consumption and decreasing plant foods. The demonization of red meat was based off of a few hypotheses based on observational studies that have been proven to be false. Saturated fat has slowly been disappearing as the cause for heart disease in scientific literature because it's not the cause for heart disease. The studies on colorectal cancer were done on people who also ate more sugar and processed foods, McDonald's. The need for fiber is a myth when you don't consume plants. Our populations need high levels of vitamins. It turns out that's only necessary because we're consuming so many carbs, we can't handle the amount of sugar in our body. As soon as you eat more meat and less processed food, that need goes away and vitamin deficiencies recover. I think what people should be focused on more than anything else is making other people healthier. Can you imagine a population where obesity was non-existent and autoimmunity and mental health wasn't a concern? You have no idea who's out there dying of a lifestyle-caused disease that could get healthy and fix our climate issues. And forcing the reduction of the amount of meat eaten, a somewhat narcissistic venture under the assumption that you know what these new man-made foods do for people's bodies better than 2 million years of evolution, something evolution could produce, is a massive and dangerous mistake. We've evolved eating meat, the food and fat that enabled us to develop the brains we have. Assuming we can replace that with something we've created, naive. And how dare we, as a first world country and developed nation, spread word around the world that eating meat is immoral and unhealthy. In areas of the world where women can't work or own land, they can usually own ruminant animals. That gives them and their families money, food, and a job. In places like Kenya, people's diets are mainly starches, not out of choice. And there are studies showing that adding meat into these children's meals increases their test scores by 45%. If you use meat as a first food for a baby, their head circumference is actually larger than babies fed without meat. My main concern is people eating healthily, and meat is the healthiest and most improperly villainized food out there. Ruminant meat is the only food that people can actually survive on as a single food without supplementing anything else, which is the perfect elemental diet for a sick person. I wouldn't wish what I went through on anyone, and I want to reduce the suffering so badly that I'll stand here and tell you that only eating meat might put certain diseases into remission. I get where the negativity comes from. It's unbelievable. It's so unbelievable that in the first study on the carnivore diet, released by Harvard this November, that I actually read in the Oxford University Press 2 days ago, which was convenient, they ended the study with, contrary to common expectations, adults consuming a carnivore diet experienced few adverse effects and instead reported health benefits and high satisfaction. The generalizability of these findings and the long-term effects of this dietary pattern require further study. The surprise came because an average of 90% of people saw improvements across all diseases on the diet. 1 in 4 people over 64 have type 2 diabetes in America. All respondents with diabetes discontinued non-insulin injection agents. 84% discontinued oral medication, and 92% of participants on the carnivore diet with type 2 diabetes discontinued insulin altogether. Over 2,000 people were studied who were on the diet for over 6 months, and there was a 90% reduction in all diseases. In my opinion, this type of potential treatment for disease needs to be studied further before we move beyond meat. Thank you.